This is The Manly Catholic, the podcast that calls you out of the shadows and into the fight. Here we forge men into warriors for Christ, husbands, fathers, and leaders who refuse to kneel to the modern world's lies. No more passivity, no more excuses, no more lukewarm faith. This is your battle cry, your call to arms. The time for weakness is over. It's time to fight. Welcome to The Manly Catholic. Let's get to work. Hello all, welcome to another episode of The Manly Catholic. This is James, your host, and tonight I have me with a guest I'm very excited for you all to listen to. We have Paul List. Paul, welcome to The Manly Catholic Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, James. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate getting this message out, J.R.R. Tolkien. That's so important.
Yes. So Paul wrote this incredible book. It is called Mount Doom. I'm just going to do a little flash here for you guys here. But Mount Doom, the Prophecy of Tolkien Revealed. So we're going to be talking all things J.R.R. Tolkien tonight. Now, Paul is a cradle Catholic, self-educated philosopher, and a self-employed entrepreneur. In his spare time, he reads and rereads Aristotle and Aquinas. So I guess if you're going to reread some stuff, it might as well be Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas.
Well, you have to. I don't agree with the Enlightenment philosophers on almost anything, but Schopenhauer did say that if it's worth reading once, it's worth reading twice. So,
Amen.
And I believe that. And I think my book is definitely, I get a lot of people that say, I have to go back and read it again. There's so much there that, you need to read it. And you do. It's complicated. It's very complicated.
It is. And I'm definitely one. I think I mentioned to you off the air as well. I'm trained as a physical therapist. So like the hard sciences, anatomy, physiology. So that's like naturally where my brain goes to.
Yeah.
So philosophy has always been a little more difficult for me, not because I don't, deem it important, just because my brain has a little more trouble grasping like those really big concepts and ideas and things like that. So yeah, I got your book, like I said, and I was a little naive going into it, but I've been blown away. I feel like I'm highlighting like every other paragraph and everything because the things that you guys are saying, and I'm just like, this is incredible. So really well done to you. Is it Ali? I want to make sure I'm saying his name right. Ali.
It's okay. Ali Ghaffari. I mentored him when he was young and actually converted him. He was an atheist. He was going to be a brain surgeon. Oh, wow. And he wound up converting after I'd mentored him for a while. And then he didn't want to be a brain surgeon anymore. He wound up joining the Navy and became an F-18 pilot. And then he taught at the Naval Academy for a while. And then he went out and started his own classical Catholic education, his own classical school in Maryland called the Divine Mercy Academy. And they're doing really, really, really well. Ali's doing some great work. Ali is responsible for the book, for actually making the material book come into being. It was all up here in my head, and I really needed him, and God really put it. This is God's work through and through. It's God's work. I'm trying to be a material and willing instrument. I fail. I'm lazy too, and I have. I did want to say though something. If you've got a problem with philosophy, it's probably because you haven't gone through the dialogues of Plato.
Oh, okay.
I would start there. Anybody, don't be in academia these days is just it's a catastrophe. And you really need to start with the dialogues of Plato, and it really teaches you the dialectic method.
Okay.
The discursive, the Socratic method. And it's really great. Sure, he gets a lot of things wrong. He was a pagan and whatnot, but that's not the important part. The important part is the question and the process of going through to come to probable, logical, rational conclusion. And then you can move from there. You can move to Aristotle's Organon, his 5 treatises on logic. It's in there. It's in my book. I give kind of a brief description of how I got reading, how I got started, and just some of the things that, that I thought were, I just, throw out there for where you need to start reading with the things that you really enjoy, as long as they're moral and ethical.
Right.
If it's an adventure. I got started reading the Conan the Barbarian. Speaking of Manly Catholic, the 1935 stuff with Robert E. Howard and whatnot, it was great. He's a great writer. It was well written. The grammar and the vocabulary was great. The stories were really manly stuff, and it got me really reading. And then after I was finished with those, and that was when I was probably 32 or 33, and then after I got done with those, I had built up a pretty good intellectual endurance for reading. And then I took on, okay, what do I want to read now. So I started reading, like the Bible, go through the Bible, and that was, of course, wonderful. And then, Flavius Josephus, all of his works, and Augustine, and, Aristotle. But I compare it kind of like to helicopter skiing. These levels of knowledge and understanding, there's like a mountain. And you have to train. If you're going to go helicopter skiing, say, they're going to drop you off the top of Mount Everest and you've never even, gone anywhere skiing other than the kiddie trail, you're not going to last very long. So you really have to build up your endurance to read. And then once you've built up your endurance, you can actually take hold of some of these more complicated, lengthier works like City of God and things like that. And then eventually, with enough preparation, you can tackle things like Contra Gentiles, start there. And then you can work your way into the Summa. And that really is the top. That really is the top of the intellectual powerhouse is Aquinas and his Summa Theologia. But you have to prepare for it. So that's just a note on philosophy. And if you're going to read the Enlightenment philosophers, you really need to know your scholastic philosophy. You need to understand real philosophy, and then you can call these guys out on their errors, and it's just full of errors.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate you saying that too, and giving me those recommendations, because it's something that I'm definitely getting more interested in. But like you said, you have to have a foundation. If you don't start at the basics, and basics too, not only with that, but like in a way that you can understand, then that you can't, like, I can't go read the Summa and I would be way overwhelmed over my head, and I'd probably like, oh, this work is terrible, and it's like obviously one of the best works of all time. So it definitely gives you a right perspective. So
like I call it the handbook. It's the handbook to the human being. It should come with every human soul, so you can actually, everything you need to know about yourself, about God. Not everything, but everything you need to know, and probably most of the stuff that we're humanly capable of knowing about God. So he climbed the mountain higher than anybody else that I know of.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wait, Paul, I know we're already diving in, but let's stop for a second, pause, and we'll just start with the St. Michael prayer, all right?
Okay, yeah, very good.
So we'll start in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly hosts, by the power of God, cast in hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Paul, question I always ask my guests, first-time guests, is if you could be the patron saint of anything, what would it be and why?
You're really asking me a question that reveals what I think is most critical and most important. I think I'd go right to the top and go the patron saint of reason, and maybe the patron saint of dialectics, which is the art, discursive logic, and real skilled argumentation. I think the reason is part, at least, of what makes us in the image of God, perhaps the most important part. The rational soul, we're capable of ration, so we're capable of returning God's love. That's why we were created. We were created for relationship with God. So I'd go there. I'd go right to the top and say I'd be the patron saint of reason.
All right. You and St. Thomas Aquinas.
Well, he's a patron saint of education. So like we were saying. That's
true.
I think I'd be a poor substitute for, I'm not
going to try. We won't even touch that. We won't touch that subject.
You could crowd in on that man's territory.
Well, Paul, let's just start kind of the most basic question for you is, what even got you interested in J.R.R. Tolkien's work? And then beyond that is develop a book, especially not exactly an easy read, a nice, easy bedtime read. And what kind of brought about this whole book idea, and what made you want to expand upon Tolkien's work?
Well, my parents read to me. I grew up in Underhill, Vermont, Underhill, Mr. Underhill, Frodo's code name. And my parents, we had 6 kids, and my parents read to us. We didn't have a TV. My parents read to us. And of course, one of the things that, among the many great things that they read to us, was The Hobbit and then The Lord of the Rings. And it left a deep impression on me. I was probably 10, maybe 11 years old, and left a deep impression on me. And I knew even then that if there's something going on here that is not just in the obvious stuff of the story. And then what got me motivated was God got me motivated. He made it very clear that this was my responsibility and I had to get this done. He literally gave me an outer body transcendental vision that was very powerful. when I was back in probably 1995, when my co-author was he was in college and he lived next door to me. We had a condo together up on the side of Mount Mansfield, basically by the Smuggler's Notch ski area in Vermont. And that's how I got to know Ali. And I had a vision that was very powerful. And then God put a fear in me that was really burned me really, really, really bad. It scared the daylights out of me. He showed me what was going on, and I was really terrified. Nobody really understood the essence of what was going on in the world, whether it was the teacher, well, probably most of all, the modern teachers, priests, airline pilots, cops, bankers. Everybody was just going through the motions and doing their job and distracted by the attributes of the situation, the phenomenon, and they weren't really seeing the essence of things or the essence of what was going on. It scared the daylights out of me. And that's when I really started to read. And by God's divine providence, everything, I have a great curiosity and a ability to put things and make connections. And so I live not far, probably 20 miles from an old bookstore, antique books.
Nice.
So I would go there and pick out books, old dictionaries, old history, and gave myself, I always wanted a scholastic education. And I've always been I'm not a fan of modern education at all. It's been industrialized. And I want to understand causes. I want metaphysics. And metaphysics has been pushed out. And now it's just about the sciences, the phenomenal sciences of quantity and mathematics, and then motion and whatnot in physics. So I wanted the other third leg of the stool, which is being, the science of being, which is metaphysics and first principles. So I did. I gave myself a scholastic education by God's grace. And then I turned it after about probably 15 years of studying while I was working, running my business and some other distractions. I turned it to the Tolkien mythology because one of my best friends had actually mentioned, I was telling him about my ideas and my explanation. He's a world-class violinist, and I mean that. And I was explaining to him about the harmonic overtone series and how things worked and whatnot. And he says, it sounds just like Tolkien's Silmarillion. And I said, huh, what's that? I had no idea. And I picked it up and I read the Ainulindale, the first chapter. And I was stood there in Barnes and Noble, just dumbstruck. I was just dumbstruck by this. And of course I bought the Silmarillion and I read it, and everything just became very, very clear because I had done the homework. I'd made the preparation. And so I knew a lot of the connections that he was making. Most importantly, I understood that the mythology is a scholastic mythology. It's scholasticism against the Cartesian errors of the Enlightenment. And there's several things going on that are conflicting with each other. That's one very highly, but also that one of the conflicts and big battles is between languages. Go figure, Tolkien was the world's leading philologist. And it's the language of the harmonic overtone series, which I've defined as the language of motion. It's the language of creation. It's a constant. And it is really, and that's where we have derived all of our wonderful Western music. Not so wonderful anymore, but it served us well for a long time, from, chant to through the Renaissance, Palestrina, and Victoria, and then into the Baroque, Bach and Telemann and all the greats, and Beethoven and Schubert, and then on till about the avant-garde, the turn of the century, 20th century. And then everything music came crashing down into chaos. So I was telling him it's that language versus the language of the machine. And the language of the machine is binary code. So the one ring is binary code, ones and zeros in the shape of the ring, and it goes on the finger. It's digital.
Fascinating. Yeah, because I was reading about Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and Alan Turing, and you were getting to that whole story. I had no idea, and I did not know Tolkien was almost involved in that whole project. And I'd love for you to dive into that more, because I was reading that, my mouth almost dropped to the floor. I was like, I had no idea about any of this, and this is where the prophecy comes in too. So I wanted to make sure to ask you about that.
Yeah, well, Tolkien was actually recruited by the Government Code and Cipher School in England at Bletchley Park, and he was recruited there to be part of a top secret code cracking team. They were tasked with the project of, and the responsibility of, trying to crack the Germans' Enigma machine, which was this cipher machine, very complicated. And of course they needed that. The Germans did, because they were giving out orders via radio and etc. all over their huge front of war. So they needed a very secure ciphering capacity. So you had one machine from where the orders would go out, and it was a series of wheels, different size ratios. So you could set it up, and then they added, for the military, they added a bunch of electrical circuits. So you could cipher anything in almost an infinite number of, so you scrambled it. And then on the other side, whoever was receiving the radio signal, they just typed in what they received, because their machine, they had a machine too, and it was set up the same way. And then it would come out in the German language crystal clear. And then, to make matters worse, they would change the way the machine was set up, because they had interchangeable wheels. They would set it up in a different way. Sometimes they'd change it 2 or 3 times a day. So it was very, very difficult. It wasn't about cracking some code. It was about cracking the machine. And fortunately, the Allies actually captured the machine. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to crack it. But Tolkien trained there for 3 days. On staff there was Alan Turing, who is the father of the modern computer, the father of artificial intelligence, and the father of a process called morphogenesis, which the mathematics, computer science are using today for the artificial intelligence to actually develop its own neural network, its own brain. So these are very, very powerful ideas. After 3 days of training, Tolkien, they offered him a job, permanent job there, and he declined, and they were miffed. Well, why would, and then they, writers made fun of him and said, well, he'd rather fight, Sauron and Mordor than fight Hitler. And that's just not true at all. What he saw beyond that and knew very well was the fact that all they were going to do is make a machine more powerful than the one that they were trying to defeat. Tolkien was no fan of machinery at all. He didn't want any part of that. And he certainly didn't want any part of a machine that he could see very clearly would ultimately lead into and more encroach in the human thought process. And that's a disaster. And that's what we have right now. He also, I think, would have realized very quickly, because he was brilliant, he would realize very quickly that this isn't about language. This is about statistics, probabilities, and pattern recognition. And that's the realm of the statistician and the mathematician, not a philologist. They weren't going to invent a new language, so he opted out. But that experience put him in contact with the war machine itself and the ideas of Alan Turing. And then he followed Alan Turing. I can tell he did, because he put many of the elements of Alan Turing's 3 very powerful papers. He put those elements into his mythology. He also has Alan Turing represented in a way, very clear way, in the character in the Silmarillion in the first stage, Turambar, Doommaster. And he just slangs his name. He just takes the G off. Tolkien did many things like that. So what Tolkien created was an incredible masterpiece of the history of Christendom. And then he creates his creation story, which is the Ainulindale. Conventional Tolkien scholars have always said, well, that's his version of the story of Genesis, and it's not. He would never compete with the biblical account of Genesis, but what he did was use that kind of as a model, and then he made a partner story to the Genesis, the creation of everything. About his myth was the creation of a single human being, with a rational soul, and he named that Arda. And within Arda is Middle Earth, and Middle Earth is the material brain. So he gives characters to these intellectual and philosophical concepts and principles, so we can actually understand what's going on. Otherwise, he would only be talking to fellow theologians and fellow philosophers and scholars on a very high level, and that's not at all what he wanted to do. He wanted to communicate to everybody. So he wrote this incredibly powerful and incredibly beautiful and entertaining saga, but it's a saga about a representative human being, a representative now, soul, body and soul, named Arda, and it represents all of Christendom from its beginnings as in the Catholic Church, steeped in the faith. Then it falls into dualism, Descartes' dualism, along the way. First, it falls into mortal sin. We can go into all this and how that happens, and then it falls into dualism, and then the will and the intellect, because this is all scholasticism. The will and the intellect, who are Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, they actually make the decision to change their evil ways because they've been microchipped. Now, the Arda has the microchip. It's been on the road to transhumanism, and they make the decision to call the cardinal virtues out of the Shire, which are the Hobbits, and Hobbits are habits. Yes. And the 4 Hobbits that we know and love so well, Frodo, Sam, Pippin, and Merry, are the cardinal virtues: temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. And they called Tom Bombadil and Goldberry make the decision, because they're the rational will and the intellect, the heart of the mind, to change their evil ways and cultivate better habits. And that's exactly what they do. And then they send them on a quest and meet them up with the necessary, the high reason, faith, science, scientific knowledge. I mean, and form the fellowship that are the strong assets and facets of the rational mind, and send them on the way to destroy the ring, the one ring, the language of the machine. And ultimately, when they do, Sauron, who's artificial intelligence, at the end of the third age, and Barad-dûr, where he dwells with the eye, is now been embedded in the cerebellum, which is Mordor. And when they do this language of the machine, everything comes crashing down. And Tom and Goldberry, I explain it all in the book. I don't want to get too far off. You asked me the question about the.
It's okay. Keep going. You're on a roll, Paul.
Yeah, I have a tendency. You gotta, have you ever fished for like pickerel or pike or bass? And you get in the bulrushes with the something tangled up, can't get it out. That's me. Yeah, I'll get bulrushes and tangle it. Right. Great big old log, and you'll never come back.
Coffee and prayer. It's the perfect blend. Mystic Monk coffee isn't just another cup of coffee. It's handcrafted by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming, roasted with care and infused with prayer. Whether you're starting your morning or fueling your day, Mystic Monk coffee has you covered. It offers rich, bold flavors that are as divine as their mission. By choosing Mystic Monk, you're not just enjoying exceptional coffee, but you're supporting a community of monks dedicated to their work, to prayer, and to the church. It's coffee with a cause. So what are you waiting for? Visit mysticmonkcoffee.com and experience the brew that's fueling faith and flavor. It's fascinating that you mentioned, when I was reading this about Tolkien and what he found that Alan Turing was doing with, you're just making a machine, and it's basically machines fighting each other. And we see this AI boom, and it just like ChatGPT. And I was talking to Father Dom, who I do the podcast with, and he was telling me in the confessional, he's had guys, young men. I want to talk to you about that too, because you wrote this for young men, you said, and you had in mind when you did that. But he was saying he is having men now where there's these AI characters that they're creating, and they're basically having these like sexual relationships with these AI characters, these avatar people. And this AI, he said, I'm having to counsel this young man, and he said the AI named itself is like, I am your, what do you say? I am your like demon sex. I'm your sex demon.
Yeah,
basically. And the AI just named itself that. Like they didn't, and it's like, so what is behind all this? Like clearly something like cynical is. But when I was reading that in your book, and like Tolkien was already like kind of foreseeing all this, and then you mentioned the characters. I want to dive into the characters a little bit too as well, what you just mentioned, because I just think it's fascinating, because I had no idea. I knew obviously Tolkien was Catholic and the Catholic undertones and everything, but I had no idea about his connection to Alan Turing and Alan Turing's major papers that you brought up, his 3 major papers as well. Yep. So just all these things that are connecting the dots, and I just think it's I think it just shows how brilliant Tolkien was in that. Yeah, he's just a national treasure.
He's a global treasure. He was steeped in scholasticism. His education was very scholastic. He was raised by Father Francis Morgan, who just happened to be the personal secretary to St. John Henry Newman for 25 years. So he was raised there at the Birmingham Oratory under the guardianship of Father Francis Morgan, him and his brother Hilary. After Mabel had died, and we dedicate the book to her because she actually died for the faith. She had found the pearl of great price, the Catholic faith, and she converted from Protestantism to Catholicism. And her husband, Arthur, had just died in South Africa, leaving her with 2 young children with no support. Her parents and her in-laws were all staunch Catholic hating Protestants, and they refused to give her any support at all until she came back to Protestantism. She said no, and she wouldn't. And they basically starved her to death. She died of a very treatable form of diabetes, very young too, and she was very important to J.R.R. Tolkien. She was just a wonderful lady. She was a wonderful pianist and painted. She spoke at least 4 languages, and she was really critical. And if she hadn't died for the faith and given J.R.R. Tolkien and Hillary to Father Francis Morgan under his guardianship, we wouldn't have The Lord of the Rings. We wouldn't even know of J.R.R. Tolkien. It was really, everything's in God's providence, but Abel's sacrifice was really important. And I'd like to get, someday, I'd love to be able to push the canonization process for her. She was a very, very wonderful influence, and we need her prayers. So yeah, you're not alone to not know about the connection with Alan Turing. It's public knowledge, but it's certainly not common knowledge. And so he wrote this mythology under the auspices and the providential almighty hand. So he subcreated, like he said, to the highest degree he was capable of, which was pretty high, as we can tell. And he wrote this mythology, and then he said, nope, it's not about anything. Don't try to make it anything. Just leave it alone. It's just entertainment. Don't think anything. Just, don't try to make anything more of it. And by the way, I cordially dislike allegory, and so you've got these people. And what he did was he was protecting his work. And it's true. He did cordially dislike obvious allegory. I think he was kind of poking at C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis's allegory is just really, really in your face. And it dominates your imagination. You just can't think about anything else. Try thinking about Ashland as anything but the Christ figure. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just, it's so, and Tolkien didn't like that. He said very clearly, I don't like the type that dominates the reader's imagination.
Yeah.
And nobody can say that Tolkien dominated anybody's imagination, because the mythology's been completely misunderstood until now. And J.R.R. Tolkien really knew that if he just wrote it and kept it preserved and kept it safe and just sent it out into the future, God would provide for its exposition when the time comes. And by God's hand, I don't know why he chose me. I really don't. I'm not worthy. None of us really are, but he put the fear in me. He gave me the vision that I needed to see and the fear that I needed to start reading. And I started reading, and I really gave myself a fairly good scholastic education, which was this education that he had, which is the pre-Enlightenment. It's at the foundation of Christendom, and it really came to its apex with Aquinas. But it's still steeped in Aristotle and all through Augustine and all through church fathers and doctors, and the church plays a heavy part in this. And of course, Tolkien was a very devout Catholic. But the term devout Catholic is about all the credence that most, particularly non-Catholic Tolkien scholars, give him. They say, oh, he's a devout Catholic, and then they go on to, well, this all comes from his experience in World War I in the trenches. Yeah. That's really shallow. Christopher Tolkien said when he was talking about the movies, he was very disappointed in the movies. And he said, they've turned Tolkien's my father's work into a action movie for, I think, 18 to 25-year-olds, and they've completely overlooked the philosophical underpinnings, which is what it's really about. So when I looked at the Tolkien mythology after I'd given myself really studied for, 15 or 20 years, it just absolutely just unfolded. Just boom, it was laid out. And I realized that what Tolkien did was he wrote this incredible, beautiful masterpiece, and then he put it in a box. It was like a 4,000-piece puzzle. Okay. Jigsaw puzzle, and then he put it in the box with the wrong picture on it, and he let everybody misinterpret it. He let everybody confused, because they all went down the wrong road. They all went thinking this world that is this material world, and it's not. It's a psychological saga, and the world that he refers to, he uses the term world in the secondary etymological meaning, which is a man's world, and that would be like Paul's world or James' world, and that's our experience, and that's where we're at. That's the world, and that is Arda, within which is Middle Earth. So he gives us everything we need. He gives us our background. He gives us our history. He gives us the whole saga of the psychological struggle with artificial intelligence, with these things that you just mentioned, like these demonic sex demons that are pulling a lot of very, very disenfranchised and confused and ill-educated young men with all their hormones and everything else. And they've been put at odds. The modern feminist girl, young women of almost all ages these days have been really perverted and turned against the relationship between the necessary and symbiotic relationship between a man and a woman, and how we complement each other. And now that, even motherhood is deemed oppression. And we end up with things like abortion. It's your fundamental right. It's your power, girl power.
Yeah.
And it's a disaster to civilization, and then they push all this stuff through the school system, which has really just become Marxism. Just to put a plug in for our recent documentary that was just released on Pelican Plus, the new Catholic thing is called The Great Indoctrination. I'm the executive producer in that, and my co-author Ali, who I mentioned earlier, I'm with you. I mentored him when he was young. He stars very prominently in it, and he started a school, Catholic education in Maryland, the Divine Mercy Academy. And he's a real go-getter. You want to talk about a young man who really made it happen? He became an F-18 pilot, and then taught at the Naval Academy for several years before he retired. And he retired at, I think, 41 or 42. Yeah. So, and then Ali helped me put the book together because he's such a doer. Like I said, you're fishing here, James. You got to reel me in if I get too tangled up in the
you're
weed.
good, Paul.
Okay.
But I did want to ask you specifically for the young men too, because I know you mentioned that was what you had in mind in the readership for it. And because I think too, a misconception like you just talked on is when you read Tolkien, the biggest thing, if you haven't read before you watch the movies, is you need to completely eliminate that.
Good luck.
Because it's hard. Absolutely. Because when you were mentioning the characters in the book, I was picturing exactly, like Viggo Mortensen, Orlando Bloom with the elves and stuff. And I wanted to talk to you about the characters as well.
Yeah, please do.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, because this was a few weeks ago when I read this part, but the elves they're more drifting towards what was the spiritual realm, correct?
Well, the elves are faith. That's what they are.
Yes.
Okay. They're faith. Men are reason, and the various levels and species of reason. Elves are dwarves are scientific knowledge. That's why they're adopted. Right. They're adopted. You can have a rational soul, but you don't need scientific knowledge to have a rational soul, but you need reason, men, and you need elves, faith, and that's what makes you whole. The whole mythology is really, I think, a belated response to Leo XIII's fantastic encyclical Aeterni Patris, from 1879, where his call and pleading with Christendom to return to the sanity of Aquinas and the scholastics and do away with these suicidal notions of the Enlightenment. And this was, well before Tolkien was even born, but Tolkien was reader of the two, and Leo XIII had a big part and a big influence on J.R.R. Tolkien, as did Pius X, at least. So it's a response to that, and it's about the returning and the reunification of faith and reason. And you realize, as I point out, the marriage and the plays really heavy, and the whole mythology at the end and it leads all the way through the Third Age, at least in the areas that we know from, we'll just say from the movies and the Lord of the Rings books, is about the wedding of Arwen, Elrond's daughter, and Aragorn. And Elrond's daughter, Arwen, is the last of the daughters of faith. And Aragorn is the last of the High Kings of Numenor. And of course, Numenor is a direct reference to John Henry Newman. That's high reason and then high faith, and they have to come back together and re-wed. And when they do, what they find, Gandalf, who's philosophical wisdom, by the way, now at that point, he's philosophical wisdom. He's a Thomistic theologian, not just gray anymore. He's not pre-revelation Aristotle anymore. Now he's Aquinas. They go up behind the citadel, and what do they find? Where the snow is receding after they've conquered and destroyed the machine, destroyed Sauron and whatnot. And then the rightful king is back at the head of Gondor, which is the image of the Catholic Church, by the way, under Stuarts, not under actual kings. You can take that where you want it. I'm not a sedevacantist necessarily, but it's clear that we have some lacking in leadership in the Curia these days. But what do they find up there where the snow is receding? They find a sapling of the white tree. The white tree, the tree that's dead in the citadel because no one can tend it. No one can attend it. And that white tree is the traditional Latin Mass. And it's returned to the center of the Catholic Church.
Beautiful.
Because he takes that, he uses the image from the Cicero's great poem, The Marian Oak, where the tree is in the heart of the civilization. And it's not the same tree. It dies, of course, and it's replanted, dies, replanted. And so that, just to go that route, just to give you some idea of what it's about. It's about the destruction of the ring. And basically Arda, this fallen human substantial unity, body and soul together to make a new substance, not dualism where there's two substances that really have almost no connection. That's led to all the errors that we see in transgenderism and all this craziness. We can't just do with our bodies. We can't put our body in direct conflict with our soul, and we can't put our mind in direct conflict with our biology, our gender either. It's just an absolute disaster. But so he gives us all the thing we need to know to fight. If you like, I'd like to start right out with the biggest mystery in the whole mythology that nobody's ever known, and everybody's scrambling for 75 years or whatever, since 1954 anyway, with the publication of the Fellowship of the Ring. Who the heck is Tom Bombadil?
Yes.
Who's Tom Bombadil? Tom Bombadil.
Tell us, Paul. Tell us, Paul.
Tom Bombadil and Goldberry are the fallen, transmigrated spirits of the trees of light, Telperion and Goldberry. And Telperion and Laurelin. Goldberry is Laurelin, the golden tree. So they are the transmigrated spirits because Arda has fallen into mortal sin and the mind is darkened and the trees are killed. But right as they die, they let out they give off one last silver flower from Telperion, the silver tree, and one last golden fruit from Laurelin that contained their spirits. And the flower and the fruit themselves they became they made vessels for them, and they became the sun and the moon, and they're the fallen light of the intellect and the will, because that's what Tom and Goldberry are. Tom is the will, the free will. He can do anything he wants. He's the master. That's why Goldberry calls him the master. And Goldberry, who got her name from the golden fruit, the last golden fruit, the fruit was a berry, she is the intellect and the conscience. And so they can't stay in the undying land of Amen anymore, the immaterial undying land. They are banished to, because of mortal sin, they are banished to Middle Earth. And Middle Earth is the material brain. Middle Earth is the material brain. So the whole conflict goes on. Majority of the conflict anyway that we're familiar with goes on in the material brain, and all the characters play their part. And in the material brain in Mordor, which is the cerebellum, is the microchip. Sauron, the great idol, he's idolatry, because Morgoth, his boss, his big boss, is original sin. And Sauron is idolatry, and in the end he becomes full-blown artificial intelligence. So I'd like to just point out, you probably saw this, maybe you haven't got this far in the book. Tolkien said I wisely started with the map, and everybody says, oh, well, that must have been a map of Europe or whatever. No.
I'm on that chapter right now, actually.
This is the map he started with. It's the old Victorian pseudoscience called phrenology.
Well, yes, I remember phrenology, learning about that.
This is a map of Middle Earth. And Tolkien takes it, and that's the map that he uses. And the Shire is right there in the middle where it's self-perfection. And that's where the Hobbits reside, the Hobbits. The word habit is used 9 times in the whole mythology, 8 times in one chapter. And that one chapter is concerning hobbits.
How interesting.
And the other time that it's used is referring to Gandalf, and he's an intellectual habit.
So we have to dive in then.
Yep.
So we got Helm's Deep, we got Rohan. We have, what was the citadel? Minas Tirith?
Yeah, there were actually 2 Minas Tiriths, one in the first age. That was taken over and captured by Sauron, who's idolatry. Because who created that first Minas Tirith is Orodreth, who is Finarfin's second son. And Finarfin's children are the first 5 of the 10 commandments, according to the book of Exodus. So he is, make no graven images, have no idols. That's Orodreth. Sauron, the great idol, defeats him and takes over and captures Minas Tirith in the first age. So it's incredibly well, everything just fits there. If you thought The Lord of the Rings was really cool and really beautiful before, when you realize what he's really talking about, it's on a whole nother level of fascination and absolute beauty. So go ahead and talk about, don't let me forget about the Ents, though. They always get left out.
I'm interested. Okay, so Helm's Deep, is that, what part of the brain is that?
I'm as far as part of it, let's just go to Rohan. Okay.
Let's go to Rohan. All right.
The horsemen. Okay.
You lead us on the map, Paul. Lead us on the map.
Well, I'm not going to necessarily say they came out of the north. You can look at that. I'm not sure that's the map he used. There were several different diagrams because people had different, phrenology had different interpretations. So they didn't all agree on what was where. But Rohan, let's just start with Aragorn. Men are reason in all their levels. High reason, that's high reason, according to the scholastics, contemplates the eternal. That's what high reason does. And that's why he's an elf friend. Elves are faith. Men are reason. So high reason, the Númenóreans, before they went full-blown dualistic and wound up leading to the destruction of Númenor, that's the dualism. So high reason, Aragorn's the last of the high reason, the last of the high kings, and that's why he's the natural king of the rational soul, because high reason is the king of the rational soul. Down below that are the Gondorians, and they're fallen high reason because Gondor does represent the Catholic Church in this whole saga. Up right close to Mordor, right up close to the gates of hell, quote unquote, and always under attack, and they're always the bulwark against and protecting everything else from hell. Okay?
Right.
Not so much anymore, but we'll work on that as manly Catholics.
One step at a time, Paul.
Absolutely. So the Rohirrim, the horsemen, they are practical reason. Okay, they're not about thinking about the eternal. Okay, but they think about the practical things necessary for. They're basically common sense, and that's why they're under the thumb of Saruman, because Saruman, the wizards, are the intellectual virtues according to Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. They are the ways that man acquires knowledge, and Tolkien calls them wizards. So Gandalf is philosophical wisdom, gray and pagan pre-revelation at first, but then in the fall, after the fall at Mordor and in Moria, which is so cool, he comes back, Gandalf the White. He's a full-blown Thomistic theologian, and he takes charge of the great spirit of decisiveness, which is Shadowfax. Go anywhere he needs to get, fast, all the time. He's no longer in doubt. There's no more gray area. He knows exactly what has to get done. That's why he's the most powerful figure other than the machine, which is Sauron. He's the most powerful in the realm, the psychology. He's the most powerful, is high philosophical reason, high philosophical wisdom. But the Rohirrim are common sense, and that's why Saruman is practical wisdom. Wisdom about how to gain what we need in this realm, not the realm of metaphysics, not the realm beyond this realm, which is Gandalf. So, and then below that, of course, they left out of the movies. So if you're not familiar with the book, you won't know who they are the wild men. And the wild men are just vital instinct. Okay? It's valuable. It's very valuable, particularly when it's well cultivated. It becomes part of your, you could almost call it part of your intuition, vital instinct. So that's what men are. And then we'll go through the wizards. Gandalf is philosophical wisdom, according to Nicomachean Ethics of Aristotle. Saruman is practical reason, and he's taken over academia. He now has full control of Isengard, which is the blackened ivory tower. And he also controls Moria. And Moria is the realm of the dwarves, and dwarves of scientific knowledge, and it is the halls of academia, the halls of science. Okay, Radagast is a rational intuition. And then the two blue wizards are art and science, and they're exterior. That's why Tolkien has them continue east, and they go right outside of the psychology into the cosmology. Then they don't play a role in the mythology, because it's not a cosmological saga. The saga goes on completely inside the human psychology. So there's the men, there's the wizards. Elves are faith, and they were the three high kings of the original high kings of the elves are the way that we know, love, and serve God. And that's what they are. And Finwë is the king of knowledge. Okay. And the other two are service. I think the Vanyar, service, and then love. And that's the Teleri. Okay. It's all explained in the book, but I'm going to try to really limit it. And then dwarves are scientific knowledge. And that's why they're adopted, because you don't need scientific knowledge to be fully rational and be a rational human soul. But they're important nonetheless. So let's see. and I don't want to leave out the Ents because I usually leave
Ents. Paul, don't leave out the Ents.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me, James. You're a good man.
That's what I'm here for, Paul.
I know. What a team.
Gotta reel you in, man.
Yeah, exactly. But Treebeard and the Ents are the entelechies. And that's right out of Aristotle's De Anima on the soul. And they are the agents that bring potential into actual. And the Hurons, the trees that they heard, Hurons are neurons. They're neurons in the brain. They're part of the material brain. And that's what the Ents do. They're supposed to bring and cultivate the neurons and cultivate the material mind. And they're also being destroyed by Saruman in academia. Okay?
Destroying neuron. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Destroying the brain.
I'm following you.
Yeah, it's all, if you want to make it simple, the last chapter in the appendix right at the back of the book, I give you who all the critical characters in the Silmarillion and in the Lord of the Rings, give you all the critical characters and the species and what they represent, and a lot of the elements too, a lot of the swords and all these things and how it all fits together. And, you know, I've had people tell me, oh, you got to be wrong. Tolkien said he hated allegory and you're making it an allegory. No, I'm not making it the type of allegory that Tolkien cordially disliked, the type of C.S. Lewis that was very obvious and in your face that dominated your mind. He didn't do that. He used he used metaphor, simile, parable, fable, typology too, he uses very, very well. And he said, allegory can't be avoided. And if you're going to talk to men, you have to use images that they know. And that's I explain that. Let's get this notion out that Tolkien hated allegory so much that he wouldn't write something that made sense and had applicability. Like he said, I prefer the term applicable. The difference between applicable and allegory is the domination of the reader's mind. He didn't like the reader's mind to be dominated. And nobody could say that Tolkien dominated the reader's mind because his mythology has been completely misunderstood since its publication until now.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Father Dominic Couturier with the Manly Catholic Podcast, and I'd like to take a few seconds to share with you about Harmel Academy of the Trades. Harmel Academy of the Trades is an all-male Catholic trade school here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year program where we're dedicated to building a community of prayer, work, and study. All the men are exposed to a variety of trades: HVAC, electrical, plumbing, welding, machine systems, technology. We have multiple programs for individuals who are interested in certain kinds of trades. All the men work together, pray together, live on campus together. We actually moved to a new campus as well too. Bigger living space, bigger dorms, bigger lab. So we're growing. So we're really excited about that with you. So if you're interested in checking out Harmel Academy of the Trades, please visit us at harmelacademy.org, where you can find out more information about this wonderful all-male Catholic trade school. Thank you.
Well, and too, in the book you quoted Tolkien when he said that he wanted his book to be entertainment. He wanted it to be enjoyable and readable. And I think anyone who's actually picked it up and read them can easily see. I mean, he knew men really well. Like you said,
Sure
just all
did.
these layers upon layers. I mean, it's for the common person who maybe doesn't want to dive too deep in it, but it's also the ones who really wants to dive deep and spend, an hour on one page. And then you can see all the different connections. And I mean, it just speaks to how well he is as a writer and how, God spoke through him, just because look at all the talking points and the incredible wisdom that he has brought to our modern world. And he's still speaking to us and we still misunderstand him until we have Paul bringing it to our attention here.
Well, I don't, I'm already arrogant enough, so I don't need any help with my vanity. I mean, how could I not be vain being so handsome?
Paul, I'll just pop your bubble. How's that? I'll just pop the bubble. Yeah,
no, it's true. Tolkien wrote this and knew that if he just got it done, and he did, he worked his whole life on it. So anybody that wants to make the claim that it doesn't mean anything, you're accusing Tolkien of writing something that's meaningless. That's just for entertainment. And that's completely disrespectful to him and his faith and to his mother, frankly, and to God. Okay. So he wrote this and he knew that he was surrounded by anti-Catholic sentimentality and politics in England and at Oxford. So he kept it on the down low, but he said very clearly, my work is fundamentally Catholic, Not at first, but in the revision, he was intentionally fundamentally Catholic. He said, and it's about the fall, which is original sin, the fall of Adam and Eve, mortality, specifically the fear of death, and the machine. And I show where all these things are, and I show how everything works. But I still get people say, well, he said he didn't like allegory, and you were making it an allegory, so you must be wrong. Either that or Tolkien's lying. I had a very, very famous, who will remain unnamed, tell me that he was blown away by the first manuscript that we sent him. We wanted him to write a foreword. And he said, well, Tolkien said he hated allegory, and you're making an allegory, so either Tolkien's a liar or you're wrong, so I've got to go with Tolkien. And I was really disappointed, because he should have known better than that. But, he missed the boat. But anyway, so we've got this story. Tolkien knew that if he just wrote it and let it saturate into the world, into our culture by osmosis, not by force, by osmosis, by its pure entertainment factor, it would soak into the whole literary world globally. And he knew that in God's time, after an appropriate saturation and at the right time to combat AI and transhumanism, God would reveal it. And he just happened to reveal it through me. I don't know why. And God works with unworthy operators, and I'm unworthy. But I did get it done, and by God's grace, he gave me Ali, who's the ultimate doer, getter done. Ali can do anything. And awesome. in the material realm, he's just a dynamo. And he helped me put it all together. And the funny thing is, Ali didn't even believe me until we'd been working on it for about 4 years, off and on over a period of time, because I'd written all these essays and I gave them over time. I pretty much wrote most of the book by hand. I resurrected my cursive writing. And so I would send them to Ali, and he would do it, and then he put it together in this form. The book was originally over 1,000 pages. We couldn't get a publisher to publish a book that thick, so we whittled it down to 6. I think it's still pretty thick, but he gave me a lead.
When's part 2? When's part 2 coming out?
Well, Paul? I would love to, because I'd like to include a lot of the things. Tolkien was heavily influenced by Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, and there's a lot of her vision and a lot of her work in Tolkien's mythology.
Okay.
A lot. And I made a lot of connections, but we didn't have time for that. And I may publish a book that includes that. I'd also like to go back and do a revised version where I could, because I'm vain, I'd like to get rid of some of the simple typos or errors on maybe the proofreader or whatever. Descartes and company certainly weren't Bale wasn't a 7th century skeptic. He was a 17th century skeptic. And there's stuff like that, but like my publisher said, my publisher said, you're going to have typos. Get over it. They're unavoidable.
You can't be perfect, Paul.
Yeah.
Not till we get
Believe
to
me, I know.
That's
but Tolkien knew that if he got this done and set it out in God's time and left it unmolested, because if people really knew what it was about, they would have never made those movies. They would have crushed it a long time ago. They would have done everything they could to defame him and ostracize him. So as long as his mythology wasn't threatening, and it hasn't been threatening because nobody understood it, it's threatening now. It's threatening to the powers that be. It's threatening to the city of the earthly city, hearkening to Augustine's city of God. It's very threatening to Cain's civilization. Cain being, the father of the earthly city. So it's time now, and it's here to do battle with AI and transhumanism. It's here to save young men, particularly young men's souls from the eternal fire.
Well, that's what we need more than anything. So this AI I wanted to ask you about Saruman, and you said he's practical wisdom, like the ivory tower.
Yeah.
So, and then you said what were the trees that the Ents
are the entelechies, and it's from Aristotle's The Anima.
But the ones that they commanded, like underneath them,
the Hurons. The Hurons are neurons.
So
I gotta tell you, I'll tell you a quick story about that.
Yeah,
I was down at Lee's house in Maryland, and we were working over a long weekend because I would drive down there from Vermont, and I was laying on a mattress on his ping pong table or pool table down in the basement at his house, because that's where she shacked me up, being the host that he is. I've got some stories about that. But I'm on a mattress, very comfortable, on a mattress, and I woke up I was sound asleep in the morning, and I had a voice yell at me. I mean, as loud as can be, right in my ear. Hurons are neurons! And I woke up, boom, like, wow, of course they are. Of course they are. Because I knew the entelechy, and then when you look at what a neuron looks like, and I think we show a picture of it in the book, it looks exactly like Tolkien describes the Hurons, which is like trees with a big eye. That's a neuron. Okay.
How fascinating.
So go ahead. You were talking about Saruman.
So Saruman, was he then? So he was trying to control the Hurons.
He was trying to destroy them. He was getting information from them, but he was
So is that kind of like him, like brainwashing, like you destroy the neurons, so like you don't have
destroy and
brainwashing. Okay.
Absolutely, but it's also it's also the Entwives. I won't go to it's all in the book, and it's so complicated and so rich.
I know.
That, we've only got a limited amount of time. I'll talk your ear off until the cows come. Okay. So, but I know you've got limited time. So yes, and I would like to make this very clear. I make clear in the book. Sauron, who's taken over academia, is in the image of John Dewey. And for those who aren't familiar with John Dewey, he industrialized education. He turned education that was rooted in metaphysics and causes and first principles, he turned it into an industrial education. He was a big fan of the Industrial Revolution. He was also a huge Marxist. And Tolkien knew very well, Tolkien was very aware of him and his damage that he was doing as president of the Teachers College at Columbia University. So Tolkien puts Saruman as the image of John Dewey, destroying education and brainwashing Arda. And that's the nature of the scouring of the Shire, by the way, which they left out of the movies, which was so because the scouring of the Shire is to get rid of in the mind, in the brain, in the mind of Arda, the Marxist program, the indoctrination of Marxism. And that's what they did.
So what did the Shire represent? I know that was in the middle, according to phronology.
Yeah, it's it's the area of self-perfection. That's habits, and we perfect ourselves through habits.
Well, okay, so the habits.
We want to perfect ourselves. We need to choose the good habits, and the highest of the good habits are the cardinal virtues, and that's the four hobbits. Frodo's temperance, Sam is fortitude, and they're the interior. And then what I call the exterior are justice, are prudence and justice, and that's Pippin and Merry, respectively. But they have to serve the interior first, lest they become what the justice woke term, virtual justice, or whatever it's called these days.
Social justice warrior.
Social justice warrior, yeah, because they haven't developed fortitude or temperance.
Exactly.
It's false. It's bullying. It's false justice.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's certainly compassion and absolutely. Yeah. It's an outward veneer. They try to put up a veneer, or it's deceitful, and it's very, very debilitating. And there's a lot of debilitated minds out there thinking they're being just, and they're not. They're being Marxist pawns. So they've been indoctrinated, and it's really, really sad to see these poor kids. Now they're indoctrinated so hard that they're actually mutilating themselves, thinking that they can become the opposite sex. And I can't think of a better way to handicap yourself and make sure you never succeed in life to your fullest potential than actually going to war with your own biology.
Yeah.
Already going to war with their psychology. Now they're going to war with their biology. And kids, let's face it, kids don't have any wisdom. They're just not capable of it. The human brain doesn't fully develop until you're 24 as a male, maybe 20 as a female. Okay, but you're not even, and that's why they're trying to get the kids earlier and earlier and earlier, and that's John Dewey's whole. I've read all of his works, and he was a dangerous, dangerous soul, and he's really infected modern education, and that's why we have all this woke ideology that's pushed in the school systems now, because it's John Dewey. So Tolkien makes Saruman in the image of John Dewey. He was a great trader at one time. Education was so valuable. Publicly available education was wonderful. I mean, we used to read G.K. Chesterton back in the day, a long time ago, before this whole stuff. They used to read great, great authors and great works, and they don't anymore. I mean, they'll read something that's pornographic, and they'll have drag queens.
Okay.
They'll have drag queens come in and dance.
Yeah,
erotic
that's
things,
enlightening the soul and the brains and the young minds. That's what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead and ask me about some of the other characters that you're interested in. Did I lose you?
No, there you go. Now we're back.
Gotcha.
I wanted to ask, because I feel like I could ask you 1,000 more questions, but
yeah, please do.
Just to wrap it up. Sorry,
did we run out of time?
Cutting it out. Paul, can you hear me? All right, he's here. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, so the orcs,
Vice.
then I wanted to ask vice. Okay, so basically men choosing to just get into vice, and they turn ugly.
Well, they turn more than ugly. They start out in the beginning as goblins, and that's like a childish vice, but not nearly as deadly as the orcs. And the orcs are more like we'll just say for sake of clarity, they're more like an adolescent vice, which when your hormones start to change and whatnot, and the fire inside starts to burn, they're more of that type of vice.
Okay.
I think we probably all can decipher what I'm saying. The private sin, I think, is it's called nicely. The Orcs are really interesting because now they're a product of Saruman out of academia, and they are vice and sin without shame. No shame. They're proud.
Ooh, that's the Orci.
Yeah, and listen, the reason that orcs can't stand the sunlight and Orci can is because the sunlight is the fallen light of the conscience. That's Laurelin. Laurelin, the golden tree, is the conscience. Yeah. Okay? They can't stand, neither can Gollum. And Gollum, by the way, is in Temperance, and that's why one of the reasons he calls Frodo Master, is because Temperance is the only one that can master Intemperance. Okay? Gollum also recognizes in Frodo the direction and the hand of Tom Bombadil, who, if you remember, calls him the Master. The Master. Free will is the Master. Okay, so Gollum can see in Frodo the direction and the guiding hand of Tom Bombadil. That's why Frodo sometimes feels like somebody else is using his voice. Things just come out of him like, I will take the ring. Or touch me again and you will be cast into the fire. It sounded like somebody, great booming voice. That was Tom Bombadil at the destruction of the ring. Frodo couldn't destroy the ring. It had to be a free act of the free will. Tom showed that he's in control. He flipped up the ring and makes it disappear and plays with it, but he can't give it up any more than you can give up any other habit like smoking, for instance. That's why hobbits created smoking, by the way, created pipe weed, because it's a great habit. Okay, and hobbits are habits. So, but Tom had to cultivate virtue. He had to cultivate virtue. He had to reduce the potency and the strength of Gollum, and he did. He cultivated the virtues, and the elves gave Frodo and Sam and the fellowship that was there whey bread, and that whey bread and the cordial of the elves represents the graces coming through the sacraments of communion. Okay, and that's what they are. So they're building up strength eating the whey bread, and the less they eat anything else, like Sam said, and the more they just focus on eating the whey bread, they get stronger. In the meantime, they're starving Gollum. Intemperance is being starved while temperance and fortitude are being built up. And that way, in the end, in Mount Doom and the destruction of the ring, Temperance can't destroy the ring. He's gone as far as he can. It's up to Tom to destroy the ring, and he does. Tom casts the ring and Gollum, the intemperance, the addiction, into the fire. And that's how that goes. So don't let me get too far off from so orcs are and goblins, orcs, and Uruk-hai are various levels of vice. Okay, and Uruk-hai are the most dangerous because they're pride.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't care. They're proud of all their vicious, disordered, deranged perversion. They think it's great. It's not great. Shelob. Let's talk about Shelob real quick. Shelob is mortal sin of pornography. That's what she is. She is the last daughter of Ungoliant, and Ungoliant killed the trees of light. Melkor brought her there, so original sin made the occasion of sin. Mortal sin killed the trees of light in a state of put Arda, now this whole being, in a state of mortal sin, darkened the mind. And so Gollum, intemperance, brings temperance and fortitude to pornography to try to get devoured by pornography, because we know how powerful pornography is and how hard it is to avoid and how hard it is to give up. And so that was, and we got to touch on this, the Phial of Galadriel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
Phial of Galadriel is filial fear. That's why he used the phial. It's filial fear. And in a good Catholic knows filial fear is the highest fear because it's rooted in God. It's not servile fear. Servile fear is, I better not look at pornography because I'll burn in hell. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Hell could be, 60 years from now. I got porn right in front of me. But what does work is filial fear. Because that, now, if you're looking at pornography, if you've developed your relationship with Christ and the Blessed Virgin Mary and the saints and whatnot, you don't look at that stuff because you realize it's an absolute appalling degradation and insult to your relationship with Christ. So you don't not look at pornography out of fear. You don't look at it out of love. And that's the only thing that can defeat Shelob. Okay, and does pushes him back, and then Sting is made by the elves, so it's that faith essence.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, swords are just word with an S in front of it. So the sword represents the use of words, dialectics, and
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
why Anduril, the flame of the West, that's reforged,
Yeah.
is so powerful, because Narsil couldn't defeat Sauron, and Sauron, by the way, was the child computer according to Alan Turing. They defeated him, but Narsil was broken because it was made by the dwarves and it was just scientific knowledge. But when it comes back and it's rewelded now, it's reforged by the elves, and elves are faith. Now it's scientific knowledge forged in faith, and it's in the hand of high reason, the natural king of the rational soul. So we've got Aragorn is now the master of dialectics, debate, reason, discursive reason. He can't be defeated. And that's why Sauron fears him so much. Okay? So that it's a battle of ideas. It's not a battle in this physical world. It's a battle of psychology. And those ideas, Tolkien makes a wonderful epic saga out of these ideas battling and the consequences that these bad ideas have had, and how we work our way out of having become transhuman, at least microchipped. Or you should be working on this long before you get sucked into, if you do your study and you really understand what Tolkien is talking about, you'll never go anywhere near this technological AI. You'll never use Grok. You'll never use any of this stuff. You'll stay the hell away from it, as you should.
Well, so I wanted to ask too, the ring. Okay, so why, when you put the ring on, I know you said it was binary code, but why do they disappear?
Because they enter the virtual realm, and the Black Riders are the agents of virtual reality. They can see you. You put on those goggles, you've put on the ring. Don't even go there. And when you turn, and if you wear the ring too long, you fade. You're not part of this world anymore.
Yeah,
see that with all these kids going like this. They're not even, they're so tuned into their phone. They're oblivious of the world around them. They've disappeared to the world. And let's get this straight. The virtual realm is an ancient philosophical idea. It was called the question of continuity. And the original natural philosophers looked around and tried to figure out motion. Is it continually connected, infinitely divisible? In other words, is it an analog, or is it a series of indivisible points? Is it digital? And the reality is that our senses can't tell the difference. So we've never had the ability to make that world, that alternate reality that our senses can't tell the difference in. Okay. And that's the danger of that, the machine masters, who are the 9 ring rights, machine masters, and we all know who they are in this world, powered, overcome by the power of the ring with all the wealth and power that it gives them, the technocrats. Okay, now at this age, we can make that, and they are making that realm, the virtual realm, and it is in direct competition with God's natural creation. Don't want to go there. Don't ever go there. God is not there.
Yeah. There's definitely no angels in virtual reality.
There's fallen angels.
That's true.
There's demons.
Yeah.
And we have to realize very clearly that the angelic realm, the immaterial realm, it's more real than we are. As I point out in my book with the scholastic spectrum of reality. As you get closer to God, as the angels are by creation, they become less material, less perishable. They're not perishable, less material and immortal, or not infinite. Only God is infinite, but they are eternal. Death isn't part of their reality, but their death will be the separation of God, because the highest death is our separation from God in mortal sin. And then ultimately, if we don't change our evil ways, we've chosen permanent death in hell. And that's just being separated from God, because all life is contingent on God. Unfortunately, you won't just vanish into oblivion. You'll be suffering the consequences of being away from God and being not part of God anymore, being completely divorced from God for eternity. and you'll be there with the fallen angels.
Well, hopefully they wake up before.
Hopefully. Well, that's what Tolkien was hoping too. And that's what I'm hoping too. And I hope that more people help, particularly, like I said, I wrote the book for young men. Lee was a big part of that because he was young at the time, considerably younger than me. He's like, I don't know, maybe 23, 24 years younger than I am. And I mentored him when he was young, and his younger brother. But I had him in mind too when I wrote the book.
Well, I can tell my voice is fading a little bit, Paul. So we're gonna have to have you on again. So this has been an enthralling conversation, and I'm only like a quarter of the way through the book, so I'm sure I have plenty more questions coming. But if you don't mind wrapping up for us, Paul, just where can people get the book, the best place to get it, and any other final thoughts you want to give our audience before we let you go?
Yeah, I'll do the book first. You can get it anywhere. You can get it anywhere on Amazon right now. I think we have 64 reviews, and we have a 4.9 rating. One woman accused me of promoting material heresy because of my interpretation of Genesis, but she's confused. She thinks I was promoting polygenism, and I'm not. But you can't keep everybody happy. And then, but 4.9 is still pretty high out of 5. So we're doing okay there. You can get it there. Or you can go to readmountdoom.com, order a book there, and I'll sign it for you and put it in the mail. I'm a little low on books right now because I don't have any here in my Arizona home. They're all back in Vermont, and the printers are backed up. If I can get them now, I've already ordered them from my. So if you're willing to wait maybe a little extra, maybe a couple of weeks anyway to get the book, then order it at readmountdoom.com. Otherwise, if you're really hungry for it, you can actually just go to Amazon and read it there, and you can actually order it there. You can actually click on the look inside, and you could read probably the first 75 or 76 pages for free just as a sample from Amazon. So, and then the final, I'll just leave you with the practical things that we can do. We need to take charge of our education. Don't think because you've got a degree, which is the white hand of Sauron. That is the academic diploma. Okay. Don't think that just because you've got one of those that you're educated. You're not. You're more than likely indoctrinated. Okay. You have to take charge of your own education. Don't make the mistake of thinking that the state, the atheistic state, has your well-being in mind. They don't. Not on any level. So you got to take charge of your education, take charge of your health. Make sure you're not overweight. Every pound of extra weight that you've got on you is free storage space for the globalist Marxist masters, quote unquote, that want you fat, stupid, lazy, and ultimately dead and perverted by every vice they can force and foist upon you. So clean up your act, get rid of the extra fat so you don't have all these extra toxins in you. Okay, and it'll also help clear up your mind. Don't ever look at pornography. Don't ever go enter the virtual realm. Cultivate your competency as a human being. Real men are competent. Real men are competent. They're good at a wide range of things, and that's why Tolkien calls Aragorn a ranger, because he's got competency in the full range of manliness. Okay, he can track down Gollum. He can fight orcs and Uruk-hai like nobody's business with his sword words. Okay, but he's also the High King. He the highest of the elf friends. So be like Aragorn and cultivate your habits. Now, another thing real quick, why hobbits are so always hungry? Because Aquinas calls the cardinal virtues appetitive habits. They moderate our appetites and our desires. So Tolkien gives them great appetites. There's so many things.
He thought of everything.
He did. He absolutely thought of everything, and most of it. Yeah. Most of it's in my book. I had to cut out a bunch of other stuff. But I'd love to include the stuff with Blessed Aunt Catherine Emmerich. It's just fascinating. But maybe some other time. But we could get into that at some other time. So this is your show. Don't let me drag you on longer.
No, Paul, this was fascinating. I truly appreciate the work that you did and coming on and talking about it and getting out to our listeners. And I will put links in the show notes for all of you as well to get it from Amazon or readmountdoom.com. But Paul, again, thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you all so much for listening. And until next time, go out there and be a saint. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of The Manly Catholic. If you have not already done so, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss a single episode. It will also help grow the show and reach as many men as possible. We truly think this podcast can change families and help men to change the world. Thank you again so much for tuning in, and God bless you.